Oh, bother.
Today our perspective returns to the Empire, where Artur von Pretzen, Grand Master of the Knights of the North Star, rides with urgency through the war-torn countryside, searching for the Emperor. The fall of Dietershafen had shaken Nordland to its core, and in the weeks since, chaos had only deepened. Town after town had been ravaged, Neues Emskrank, Swedorf, and now Staven, whose smouldering ruins finally revealed the Imperial Army. "My Emperor," von Pretzen called as he dismounted, approaching with hurried reverence. "At last, I've found you." Karl Franz turned to greet him, though the light in his eyes, once sharp, commanding, had dulled to a wearied distance. "Artur, do you bring word of the Horde's movements?" Since Dietershafen, the Norscans had eluded Imperial pursuit, weaving a trail of ruin along the coast. They had appeared to head east, prompting the Emperor to cross the river Salz toward Ostland in hopes of intercepting them. But the enemy had doubled back, turning sharply south, using the river itself to sail deeper into the Empire's heart. Von Pretzen's expression darkened. "We don't know where they are now, but we know where they're going." The Grand Master relayed Count Theoderic Gausser's plan, a desperate gambit to halt the raiders just north of Kurtwallen, where the river met the outer edges of the Laurelorn Forest. There, Gausser had ordered a dam constructed, hoping to strand the Norscan ships and force them into a direct confrontation, well before they could threaten Salzenmund. With that knowledge, Karl Franz acted swiftly. He dispatched scouts to root out any Norscan splinters, while leading the bulk of his army south to join forces with Nordland. Upon reaching the encampment, the Emperor, flanked by Ludwig Schwarzhelm and Grandmaster von Pretzen, entered Count Gausser's command tent. The Nordland lords were hunched over battle plans when the trio arrived. Gausser looked up, his face torn between resolve and exhaustion. "If you've come to scold me, you'll have to wait until the Northmen are done trying to tear out my throat," he said, masking nerves with sarcasm. Karl Franz didn't blink. "Right you are, Gausser. There'll be time for judgment later. What is your plan?" Relief flickered across the Count's face. At last, unity, if only for now. Though much of Nordland's army was scattered across the province or still engaged in Ostland, Gausser had managed to assemble a fighting force. His household guard, the Salzenmund garrison, even stevedores from the docks. The Knights of the North Star had returned to him, and towering above all was his prized landship, commissioned as a pointed show of strength toward Marienburg. Together with what remained of the Emperor's army, they would form a unified front. Their plan was simple: hold the Norscans with disciplined infantry, while unleashing their cavalry and ranged superiority to disrupt and harass the enemy line. It was not a battle for outright victory, but attrition. Inflict such a toll that the marauders would be forced to retreat north. Reinforcements arrived just in time. Rain Volkard, grim and resolute, rode in at the head of over 100 Knights of the White Wolf. But their arrival carried an ominous note. He reported a shadowy force had stalked them to the tree line of the Laurelorn, ever unseen but never far behind. Who watched them from the woods? Allies, or something else? With the last strokes of the war plan drawn and the army braced for the storm, the first plumes of smoke rose on the northern horizon. The Norscan horde was coming. Once again, the men of the Empire stood shoulder to shoulder, with everything on the line. When the Norscan horde reached the dam on the River Salz, they recognized the situation immediately. Smoke rising from the Imperial camp told them all they needed to know. There would be no maneuvering, no feints. The Norscans had come to fight, and they meant to do so head-on. Landing on the river's eastern bank, they moved inland, away from their ships, hoping to draw the enemy out into open ground. Between a low hill and a forested lake, they formed up. And there, directly to their south, they found a united Imperial host waiting. Emperor Karl Franz and Baron Theoderic Gausser had chosen the battlefield well. With the river to the north and the high ground underfoot, the Imperials prepared for a grinding defense. At the centre stood the Nordland state troops, supported by the Knights of the North Star, led by the judiciary champion Egil Dirkwald. To their left, 2 companies of Salzenmund stevedores, dock workers turned soldiers, stood ready. These men had volunteered not just to fight, but to build the very dam the Norscans now crossed. On the right, atop a smaller hill, stood what remained of the Emperor's own army. Though many troops had been left behind to reclaim sacked territory, Karl Franz still fielded a corps of halberdiers and handgunners, supported by mortar teams and the elite Karabberg greatswords, led by Ludwig Schwarzhelm and the celestial wizard Heinrich Fersen. At the centre of the line stood Nordland's pride, the landship. Originally meant as a symbol of defiance against Marienburg, Theoderic had now brought it to war, an anchor point for the Imperial line and a rallying cry for his men. Behind the line, the Imperial cavalry waited. Mobile and disciplined, they were ready to flank or plug the gaps wherever the Norscan assault hit hardest. On the left wing, Rhine Volkard led his famed Knights of the White Wolf. On the right, Artur von Pretzen and his Knights of the North Star prepared to give their lives in defence of Nordland. And at the heart of it all, beneath the banners of Reichland and Nordland, stood Emperor Karl Franz and Baron Theoderic Gausser, flanked by the Reichsguard, ready to issue orders or join the battle themselves. The Norscans, for their part, needed no subtlety. A mass of bodies formed into crude ranks prepared to charge. Their hounds were unleashed first, meant to shock and demoralize the enemy. Behind them marched Wulfric the Wanderer, flanked by the daughters of Egil Refner and Freygerd Sturbjorn, driving forward a tide of marauders, 2 towering mammoths and a captured giant. And finally, Egil himself held back his elite, ready to strike once the Imperial line began to falter. Yet beyond either army's sight, another force stirred. From the edge of the Laurelorn Forest, a small band of Aeonir, woodland warriors of the Azrai, had crossed the river. What role they would play in this battle remained to be seen. And so, with the sound of the mortars, did the battle for the fate of Nordland begin.
Are you with me, men of the Empire? For Sigmar! For the Empire! For the Warhammer! Destroy it!
In spite of all their preparation, the united Imperial Army had nearly collapsed beneath the savage weight of the Norscan horde. Like crashing waves upon a cliff, the scaling hurled themselves against the Imperial lines. No amount of mortar fire, cannon shot, or musket volleys could stem their fury. Yet the men of the Empire fought like lions, meeting the marauders in brutal combat, flanking them with swift cavalry, and even bringing down the towering war beasts that marched with them. Still, through steady attrition, the Imperial line began to buckle. Had the Aeonir of Laurelorn, led by Prefect Tyrannel Duskwind, not arrived to carve a bloody swath through the Norscan rear, the battle may well have been lost. Instead, it was the Northmen, so consumed by bloodlust, who now found themselves prey to panic and fear. Their lines shattered. They fled in all directions, and Imperial cavalry hunted them like wolves. The battle was over. The Norscans had been broken. But this victory did not belong to the Empire alone. As the wounded were tended and the dead gathered, the Wood Elves prepared to depart, silent, efficient, and distant as ever. "Wait," called Emperor Karl Franz. "Might we at least offer thanks before you vanish into the trees?" Cilia Winthorn, Glade Captain and Mistress of the Thornwatch, glanced back. "And so you have," she said coolly before turning away. Karl Franz smirked. "And yet I would still wish to speak with you directly, should you not be pressed to save another doomed army before the day is done." Prefect Tyrannel Duskwind nearly chuckled, returning the smirk with one of his own. And what would the Emperor of Man have to say to the humble elves of Laurelorn? Later, within the war camp, the leaders of both forces gathered to discuss the battle, and what must come next. "This is the second time your kin have saved me," Karl Franz said, addressing the elves. "My late father once told me how we were nearly slaughtered by a beastman warherd when I was but a babe. He claimed it was the Aeonir who spared us that fate." Cilia looked up at him. "One more time," she said dryly, "and saving you will have become a habit." Tyrannel's voice followed, soft yet commanding. "We do not offer aid lightly, though this outcome favors us all. The northern coast has been weakened, and that endangers not just your empire, but our forest as well." Theoderic Gausser grimaced. Of course they had come to chastise him. Yes, his gamble had nearly ended in disaster, but his province had been slowly eroded for years. Raids from the north, quiet encroachment by neighbors, and little support from the greater empire had forced his hand. "Yet here we stand, united," Gausser declared, his grimace shifting into confidence. "We've driven the Norscans back into the sea. Their army is broken, and we will rebuild stronger than ever, with your aid." Tyrannel stood abruptly. "This was our aid, Baron." He paused, collected himself, and continued. "Queen Mariseth gave us permission to intervene should it become necessary, but our true purpose here is to deliver a message." All turned toward him. "The Queen requests your presence," Tyrannel said, his gaze fixed on Gausser. "She wishes to discuss your recent decisions and the danger they nearly brought upon Laurelorn's borders." With that, he turned to leave. Cilia stood beside him, silent but watchful. "Wait," Karl Franz said, rising. "I would be eager to meet your queen as well." Tyrannel looked back. "Not now, Emperor. When the time comes, the Queen will come to you." And with that, the elves were gone. What remained was left to the Empire, the broken battleground, the echoes of ambition, and the quiet fear of what might come next. They had survived Theoderic's gamble and Norsca's savagery, but in the aftermath, something deeper had shifted, and what followed would shake the Empire to its very core.
Now, that was a decisive battle. Even united, the forces of the Empire struggled to withstand the fury of the Norscan horde. Worn thin by prior engagements, their strength faltered. But just as the line threatened to break, the Wood Elves of Laurelorn arrived, turning the tide with ruthless precision and fading just as swiftly as they came. Yet theirs was not an act of loyalty, but necessity, and they were not the only ones watching. Though this day is won, the Empire stands weakened, and in the east, a darker shadow begins to stir. There is something rotten in Hogwarts, and it will soon become apparent to all. But that is going to be a wrap for this episode. Be sure to let me know what you guys think of the story so far and how you're liking the new direction of the channel. Until then, to all my friends, wherever you are, good morning, good evening, and good night. I'll catch you in the next one.